Hi, I'm Bob Gurr. A lot of times people will ask me a million questions about Disneyland. Most folks assume that I only did work for Walt Disney. Well, I can assure you I did work for all kinds of folks. Many jobs before Disney, a lot of jobs after Disney. Questions sometimes will come up. They says, well, Bob, didn't you have any training? Aren't you a licensed engineer? What got you started in design? Well, I'm going to tell you that. I was a troublemaker when I was like 5 years old. I loved airplanes. I loved cars, and I loved cars, and I loved airplanes. And we lived near the Grand Central Air Terminal in Glendale, which later turned out to be the tower building of Walt Disney Imagineering. Anyway, I had a box of Crayolas, and I would do animated strips of airplanes flying and fighting. And since I didn't have any paper, I drew this on my closet wall. And I saw the world in a way that, yes, you see what you see, but I wanted to draw the world as I was going to see it. So I wound up as an employee of the Ford Motor Company in the advanced styling department, and then 2 weeks later was sent to the Lincoln studio. But in only 2 weeks' time, I could see that Detroit is a dead-end place. That would be a dead-end job. And it was kind of a shock to have to make a decision that what I'd had my heart set on for many, many years, put all this effort into, I had the wrong job. And it was not going to be enjoyable one bit. So in October of 1954 was the first of a long series of jobs designing attractions for both Disneyland and Walt Disney World. Now the first attraction was the Autopia car body. Now remember, I'm not an engineer. I was never trained as an engineer, but I was trained as an automobile stylist. In other words, that's the artistic part of designing the exteriors of cars. Well, Walt assumed that since I did bodies, I also did the mechanical. I didn't have the courage to tell Walt, no, I'm not an engineer and I've never designed a mechanical part of a car. I just shut up and kept drawing. So anyway, the Autopia car project at Disneyland was the education and design, engineering, test, adjust, and re-engineering and refining in operation at Disneyland to teach ourselves what it was going to take to have equipment actually survive long-term at Disneyland. Now remember, Disneyland was a whole brand new idea of amusement park where everything was custom. Walt really didn't want to buy anything that was store-bought from some other manufacturer. So we were all in the fix of having to literally design and invent the stuff ourselves, and in so doing, we were not really experts at it. So we had to teach ourselves how to be experts, and that's what we did the rest of the summer of 1955 and going into 1956.
Bob's many designs for Disneyland included a double-decker omnibus and an amazing attraction called the Flying Saucers in Tomorrowland. The saucers, with guests on board, floated on a cushion of air, like a giant air hockey game. Using Ward Kimball's fire truck as a prototype, he created one for Disneyland.
By the spring of 1957, Disneyland had a whole bunch of new projects that it was beginning to think about. It wanted to add more attractions. And of course, people always said that if it had wheels on the bottom, why, Bobby got to do that. Now, Walt would call me Bobby. I just couldn't stand the name Bobby, but I didn't have the courage, again, to tell him, no, I don't like Bobby. I remember that in later years because as we were doing a series of vehicles, which was, you know, the two omnibuses, and of course, we had the red car and the yellow car, and one day he comes in my office again, and I took advantage of him this time, and I said, Walt, you know, there's something we haven't got on Disneyland. We don't have a fire engine. And Walt said, no, we don't. And then a little while later, the accounting department, again, they called and say, the charge number for the fire engine project is, and I thought, well, I'll be darned. I just suggested something to go in Disneyland, and I'm going to have my own ride. So even today, when I ride that fire engine, I can look and say, that's my attraction. I was quite surprised that Walt took me up on that suggestion, but you got to remember, Ward Kimball was one of the crazy animators over there, and Ward Kimball had a 1916 American LaFrance fire engine, which I would drive in parades in Temple City for Ward years before I ever worked at Disney.
With the submarine voyage, the very first e-ticket attraction, opening on June 6, 1959, the monorail had to be ready for its premiere with the Matterhorn on the same day, June 14, 1959. With its sleek lines and bubble top, the monorail was truly a look into the future.
Installing the monorail at Disneyland for the 1959 Tomorrowland project, we only got it on the beamway only 2 weeks before the dedication day for a 90-minute live TV production of this opening of the 59 projects. Anyway, the first trip on the train was about 1/8 of an inch. And sure enough, I went to back the train out of the work shed where we had assembled it, and here comes Walt. He climbs in the back of the train, so he's going to be the first guy to go for a ride in the monorail. And there was a bang and a pop and a big sound like a siren, and I saw all the electrical guys jumping over the earth berm away from the train. And so naturally I disconnected the main electrical very quickly when I heard all that. And after a few minutes, I climbed out of the train, and Walt got out of the back, and he just walked away, didn't say anything. And the electrical guys came back and explained why they jumped over the berm. It's because electrical motors, if you break the shafts, they will simply raise in speed until they explode. It's only a few seconds, and sometimes those parts go a quarter mile away. Well, nobody told me that. Had I known that, I wouldn't want to have been anywhere around that train when we hooked it up. But they put the wiring backwards on some of the motors, so these motors took off in opposite directions and naturally broke the axles. By 1961, Walt could see that Disneyland's going to be a pretty successful operation, and he was very aware that the 1964-65 World's Fair was slated to open in New York City. Well, this was a golden opportunity for Walt to take some of his expertise, gain some sponsors for projects at the World's Fair, and we wound up doing 4 projects for the World's Fair. The first one that we looked at was for the Ford Motor Company with the Magic Skyway ride, which Walt gave me the job to design and engineer an attraction with moving vehicles on a track.
Bob Gurr retired from the Walt Disney Company in 1981. He was made a Disney legend in 2004. His window on Main Street was installed in 2008.